the intro. I appreciate it. I think everybody sitting here has stories. You have your own stories. Pretty fascinating stories. And as a psychologist, that's part of my fringe deal is I could hear stories. I don't know about you, but my most memorable stories came with challenges and doubts. So when God's calling, am I listening? And am I following through? So I'm going to talk about 3 areas. 1, career change, Romania, and affordable counseling. So career change, my first career was in hospitality business. I went to University of Nevada, Las Vegas, got my bachelor's in hotel administration, and I was going to be a manager of a restaurant or a hotel or something, and that was my plan. So when I got my degree, a buddy of mine, we always wanted to live in Honolulu. So we went to Honolulu. We had no jobs, but we had these degrees, and we thought, with these degrees, we're going to get a job right away. Well, do you think that happened? No. My friend, he lasted about 6 weeks, he went back to the mainland. I lasted a couple months, and then I finally got a job at an outdoor nightclub, and I was a bouncer doorman. And that's, you see your degree working, right? But at the day, I was looking around, looking for management. And I finally got management in various restaurants, and I was kind of moving up the thing. And then there was about a few years, I was 9 years in Honolulu. About 4 years into it, back then, I don't know if you've probably heard of this, they're called discotheques. Well, back in the 70s, disco was pretty good. And this was a discotheque on top of Westin Hotel, right? And so I applied for the manager, and I got it, right? So here's a young guy, top of the Ilokai Hotel, lights, pretty people, music, everything, and I was having a ball. But at times, though, I felt like something was missing inside. So through prayer, I felt like I needed to do more. So I started to volunteer. I was Big Brothers of Hawaii, so I had a little brother. And then I also began volunteering at the suicide hotline as a phone volunteer. And when my friends said, why would you want to do that? And I said, it's pretty exciting. So I thought, I'd like that position, probably the handwriting's on the wall, that I was going to be moving. I also began taking courses at the University of Hawaii in psychology, because I only had one psychology course, because all my was in hotel and business. So I said, okay, I got to make a move. So I quit my job. The place was called Annabelle's. The next week, I was working at Hawaii State Hospital as, an orderly. The guys in the white coat, because I had no experience, but I thought all psychologists, and at that time I couldn't spell psychologist, but I thought all psychologists worked in the St. Miller Hospital. Well, okay, they really don't, but I learned a lot. So I said, okay, Lord, if you want me to serve you through mental health, I have to get into grad school, all right? So it worked, right? I went into grad school in Fresno, California. It was a 4 to 5 year program to get my PhD so I could be a psychologist. And I enjoyed all the courses except one, and that was statistics. I just didn't connect with that, right? So the comprehensives come in all PhD programs. You go 2 years in, and then they give you all these different tests, and one had to do with statistics, a 4-hour course comp that you had to pass. And if you didn't pass, you gave you three chances. It's like baseball. 3 times, you're out. Okay, I know I'm not good, so I studied really, really hard. First time, failed. Okay, tutor group, I had a tutor. Working, studying, failed. The third time now, you know what happens, right? So I studied. The night before, I said, okay, Lord, if you really want me, I've done my part. This brain doesn't work really well in that area, and I'm pretty anxious now because the stakes are pretty high. So what do you think happened the third time? Passed? I failed. I got a letter to a couple days in the mail. It says, Thank you for coming, but at this point you are terminated from the program. The last line, though, said, you can appeal if you want. Thank God. So I appealed, and with the grace of God and some help, I passed the 4th time, right? So, again, I said, Lord, the only way that I'm going to stop going to school is I have to get kicked out. And by God, I did get kicked out. I didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. So I got my degree, went home. I was born and raised in Seattle, like Theo said. I came home, and my plan was to get some more hours so I can get my postdoc hours in, do some work, maybe teach somebody, get my own apartment, and I was still single, so I thought maybe get into a relationship. That was my plan. So I was staying at my folks' house, and I was supposed to go out with a bunch of friends on a Friday night. I was about 3 weeks in town from California, right? And for some reason, they didn't want to go out. So here I am, 37 years old, at my parents' home, watching TV. And I don't know about you, but loser, loser. But God had other plans. So I was watching this TV show, 2020, Barbara Walters, 20-minute segment of Romania. And it was horrendous conditions. And this is in 1990. And I thought after that 20-minute segment, I'm going to Romania. I didn't really know where Romania was. I thought it was maybe kind of near Russia and Name Komanichi, the gymnast. I knew that, but that was about it. So again, through prayer, and did I have doubt? Absolutely I had doubt, a lot of doubt. But I said, okay, I'll just keep walking step by step. And within 2 weeks, I found out that World Vision was looking for professionals to go where? Romania, to work in the orphanages. 2 by 2, they were going to go to all the cities of Romania. Well, there we go. So January 13th, 1991, I landed in Bucharest, the city, the capital city of Romania. And why that date is important is that's the birthday of my future wife. She was a Romanian working in the orphanage as a translator, and that's where we met, and we got married within about a year since we met. Okay, so I got my orphanage, so there I am, nervous, right? Praying, okay, Holy Spirit, help me do this. These kids are in terrible conditions. I'm going to save the day. Okay, so I walk in, and it was the kids were fine. I mean, they were talking, they were walking, there was adults around. They looked like they were fed, a lot of attention given to, and I was happy for them, great. But where are the kids that I see on the show? So I asked the director, and she told me, oh, they're in the other building. I go, what other building? Well, there was this another building in the corner, of the grounds, and it looked pretty beat up. It goes, those are the kids, somebody made the determination that they were not going to thrive. So basically they were just kind of housed there. They were fed, changed, that's about it. No education, no taking outside, nothing like that. So I asked her, what floor is the worst floor? And she said, the 3rd floor. I said, that's my floor. Okay. Again, there's not books on this, so I said, okay, well, what I've learned so far in child development, I will try to do that. So then the day came. So I walk up. I'm on the 3rd floor, right? This is in the middle of the afternoon. It was quiet. Once in a while you might hear a kid, scream but it was pretty darn quiet. But then I heard clicking, metal clicking, click, 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 click. I go, what is that? So there was this long hallway on the 3rd floor, and they had doors, and all the doors were shut. So I opened it up, and the clicking was the kids housed there were chronologically from 2 to 5 years old, right? And they were standing in their crib, and they're going back and forth, and that was the clicking of the metal. We call it self-stimulating. They're just stimulating themselves. And when they saw me, they really started to shake. I go, oh my gosh. So what I did was I checked out all the kids, and the kids were in the cribs that were lower. They could get out and kind of walk somewhat, but there was no supervision. They were piling on each other, they were crying, snot was coming out of their noses, they were wet. It wasn't a good scenario. So I said, well, these nurses, which they called in Romania as infirmaries, these infirmaries, which are, they're not nurses like we see nurses here. They're uneducated women that are not trained, and they're saying, take care of these kids. So I said, I'm going to shadow them and see what they do, because it seems like people are not doing too much. Well, I did. And what I found was what they did in their course of their 8-hour, 16-hour day was change them 3 times a day and feed them. Other than that, that's all they did. And once in a while, they might take some of their favorites out and play with them a little bit. But basically, the kids were left to on their own means. So I said, okay, this isn't good. So I tested everybody. Again, chronologically, they're around 2.5, 3 to 5 years old, and I tested them. There's 25 kids on the floor. And mentally, they're about 1 year old, cognitively, and about a year to year and a half motor-wise. So there was a lot of delay here. Okay, so what to do? Well, I got excited. I said, come on, we have to talk to the kids. We have to, play with them and give them attention and smile, and we need to do all these things. And so I had a meeting, and most of the infirmaries were there, and they agreed that they'll follow the program. I had this program. I thought this is going to be great, help the kids get out. We're going to liberate the kids. Well, the next day, I came a little bit late because I wanted on purpose to see the program in its entirety, right? It's going to work. And so what do you think happened? Nothing happened. They weren't following the program because it was my program. It's my program. It's my idea, right? I was too fast. I had to slow down, and culturally too. And here's American telling us what to do, right? Even though they nodded, like coming from a communist situation, they're going to nod, and then behind your back, they're going to do something else. So I said, okay, so I'm going to need some more people to help them, because I wanted to eventually take these kids outside. I wanted to begin to feed themselves, toilet themselves, and mostly interact and have fun with like kids should have. So I thought I'd teach at the University of Cluj, which I did, and it'd be fun teaching, but my main objectives was I'm going to get students to be interns to come to the orphanage. Sneaky, huh? And I didn't even think they were paying me, so what the heck? I want something out of it. So I got a bunch, and that was very, very cool. Also, I found out I taught the first psychology course in 25 years at that university because Ceausescu, the dictator, did not want psychology courses taught. So I taught the first one, and that was pretty neat. So with that, all those kinds of things, we started to move gradually. And to see kids who've been in their cribs for 3 years to go outside and play, it's priceless, right? Some kids, you have to gradually shape their behavior because taking them from the crib, putting them on the floor, for some, it's like you're taking them and you put them on the moon. I mean, what is this? So you have to really gradually shape their behavior. And some others just jumped in and started to go. So that's kind of the Romanian story. And I stayed there 2 years, and then we had some more people Romanian people paid by World Vision. So we went to the other floors, and they were helping out too. So all the kids began to go outside. A lot of kids began to feed themselves, go to the toilet by themselves, because they need a little bit of help. The infirmaries, they started to do more too. And the 3 takeaways was the kids were basically, I could get these people and have people around them, which is fine, but they were the biggest change agent, were the kids, because they became a person, not just a thing that you fed and changed. They came back, they gave back, they helped their growth tremendously in themselves. The second thing was the infirmaries weren't horrible people. They were lovely people. They were just put in a situation and from administration to the nurses, that these kids were throwaway kids, so what the heck? So that's what they were told. And so, you know, I couldn't really be angry at them. And then the parents, you're thinking, well, geez, parents, you have all these beautiful kids, and why are you giving up your kids? What's up with that? Well, the Romanian people are beautiful people. I've spent many times with them, going to their homes, and they're wonderful people. What happened was, when Ceausescu was in dictatorship, he wanted to have a huge workforce, right? So to have a huge workforce, you have to have babies. So any woman in childbearing age has to produce children. If not, they're in trouble. So a lot of kids were produced, but the only thing was they didn't increase the wages. The wages were the same or lower. So a lot of these mothers, and I've spoken with one or two of them, they didn't want to give their kids up, but at least they knew their child would be fed, and the child would be in a warm, they have a roof over their head. And where they were currently, after 3 or 4 kids, it couldn't happen. So that was the love of, really, I could see the love, why they got in that situation. Okay, so in 2004, I went back to Romania, and half the orphanage was filled because the foster care system took hold a few years back, and a lot of them were going into foster care. And I think they're starting to get some subsidy for families who couldn't afford it. That started a little bit too, so some help. And then in 2015, I went back again, and guess what? The whole orphanage was very quiet, because there wasn't any kids there anymore, right? It was completely empty, which is awesome. Okay, so let's look at some slides. So Theo, let's see how you do this.
The left arrow?
The left?
Left or right?
Or left or right? Okay.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, so, yeah, that's me. I got blonde hair. Huh. That's Roxana. She was one of the kids I worked with. I worked with about 8 or 9 of the severely underdeveloped kiddos twice a week. So I did a lot of individual work with her. And initially, I couldn't even basically do this. If I did that, she'd freak out. So basically, just a little bit and a little bit, to the point we could throw a ball back and forth. So it was really very slow but rewarding work. Roxana. Oop. Okay, let's go this way. Okay. Let's see how the cribs are? They're up here. So it's pretty far up from the ground. Her name is Katerina. At that picture, she's 2.5 years old. Here is Katerina in, I think, Maple Valley at her prom. That's her prom in Washington, right? This is one of the few kids that was adopted. And it was really cool because I was the only one that met her mother. Her adopted parents have never met the mother. But I did, so I could tell her what her mother looked like and what her mother said, because her mother was very heartbroken to give her up. But she graduated from high school. She went in and got a degree, and now she's got a degree in social work, and she works with underdeveloped kids. She knows the language. She knows. So, and also it was pretty cool. She I think high school she had to shadow a professional, so she wanted to shadow me when I was in the kids crisis team, and so she shadowed me. Now, how can you predict that? If I could say this little girl was one of 25 kids, one day she's going to be in Seattle shadowing me. But that's impossible. That has to be God calling. It has to be divine. That's how that's going to happen. And this is her. We babysitted her because her folks are looking for a home. And this is our son. So again, my son, which I didn't think I was going to get married in the first place, now I have a son, and an orphanage kid is there. So that's enough. Okay. So the creation of affordable counseling came about with two experiences. One, I worked for Compass Health when I came back to the States and was married, and I worked a few jobs. And one was a kids crisis team member. And what my job was to go into ERs, high schools, and sometimes residents in Snohomish County, where kids were really having a hard time with it. A lot of times they're in their ER. And then these kids, families in chaos most of the time, and the kids were suicidal, the majority of them. So my job was to see, should these kids go back home, or should these kids go to the hospital, right? And a lot of them needed a break, and they needed to go to the hospital, because they were dangerous to themselves. But then we got some repeat kids. So I saw the same kiddos, same families over and over again, and I found out that it was very difficult, especially with folks who couldn't afford counseling, to get help. Even state help took up to a few months with applying, interviewing, intake, and all that. So I thought, boy, someday if I could be in a situation to open something like that, where people didn't have to worry about pay, that would be great. In 1998, I saw a movie, and I don't know how many of you saw this movie. It was called Patch Adams. Has anybody seen that movie? A few. All right. Robin Williams played the main role in that, and it's based on a true story of a medical student that opened up a little medical clinic while he was going to school, and basically minor medical things, because he didn't have license, so minor things, but basically it was a place where people could go that they were lonely or they were scared, and some people would listen to them and just help them emotionally, just kind of being a friend, being a body to listen. And so those two things came in my mind. So in 2008, I had, where I was with my work and everything, and my son was pretty well growing up, I could look for a place. So I said, okay, back again. God, I think you're calling me to do this, but I have to find an office that's really inexpensive, because my thought was I'd be charging between $5 and $20 a session. Well, you'd have to see a lot of people to pay the rent. So it took me a couple months, but I finally found a place, and it was an old storage room that the landlady said she could clean up. I said, okay. When she told me the rent, I said, okay, I'm in. So I started part-time, and this is the Edmonds. Actually, it's right across from Edmonds Woodway High School. Right across. That's where the office was. And I was part-time and doing, again, kids crisis team. I was a psychologist at Holy Rosary, kind of in-house person there, and doing some assessments and things. And the phone started ringing off the hook. And you can imagine, seeing somebody from mental health for $5. Who are these people, right? But I prayed, I go, I need help. Really, the following week, a woman called me. She's a doctoral student. She needed about a year and a half of supervision, and she needed to see clients. She said, do you have room? Come aboard. So she came aboard. And then a week after that, pretty much after that, someone else came aboard. Now they were working a couple days, I was working a couple days, and so we had about 6 days. And then as it progressed, we got another office in that same office building, and then another one. And I networked with the universities. A lot of our students were from Northwest University in Seattle U. A lot of them in Argosy too, before it went under. So we had all these students willing, motivated, right? They didn't cost anything, because what they're getting is they're getting hours and they're getting experience. So it's a win-win. And the clients, they can pay what they want. And so that was the model. And what we try to accomplish at Affordable Counseling reminds me of this story. And it was this little boy. This little boy was at the shore, the ocean shore, and there's all these starfish, thousands on the shore, and he was picking one up one by one and going to the water and throwing it back in, one by one, throwing it back in. Well, this man was watching him, and he's thinking, what's going on? So he went over to the little boy and goes, what are you doing? He goes, I'm saving the starfish. And he goes, yeah, but what's the point? You can't make any difference. Look at all of them. There's so many of them. You can't make a difference at all. And he smiled and looked at the man and said, well, it makes a difference to the starfish that make it back in the ocean. Right? So that's how we, kind of look at affordable counseling. I'm retired now, like Theo mentioned. God has me do other things now. And the second clinician that started with affordable counseling almost 14 years ago, she now is running affordable counseling, and she loves it, and she's doing a great job. So it's neat to pass it on to somebody else that loves the mission. The takeaways from affordable counseling are, for us, are stories. We hear so many stories from different people, right? And a lot of them are really, really priceless. And I'll just share a few with you. Because in this business, that's kind of our fringe benefit. We hear people, we see them heal, and it's very rewarding. One woman I saw on and off for a few years, but I haven't seen her for a while. She calls me out of the blue, and she goes, Dr. Jeff, I'm getting married. And I didn't know. I go, that's great. She goes, I want you to go to the wedding. I go, fine, I'll do that. It's in Leavenworth in January. Okay, I'll be there. She goes, and she paused, and she goes, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be getting married. Wow, that's pretty nice, right? And then she paused again, and she said, if it wasn't for you, I'd probably be dead. Another woman, she said, Dr. Baird, when time of stress and I had to make a big decision, I think of you. I think of what you would say. I go, oh, that's that makes me feel good, right? She goes, you know what WWJD means? And I go, yeah, what would Jesus do? She goes, when I think of you, Dr. Baird, I think of WWBS. That was very touching. What would Baird say, right? Had another lady gave me a call, and she said, I need grief counseling. I've had grief counseling before, and the person wasn't any good. The person didn't know what they're doing. They weren't good at all. And I said, okay, we'll try to help you there. And she goes, well, I was at affordable counseling. I go, oops, because I thought it was some other place, And I said, well, that was probably one of our interns. And, they're learning, and, they will adapt, and, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. I think we can help you. And she goes, yeah, but the counselor was you. Huh. So I think Holy Spirit came in, and I said, hey, can you give me another chance? And she goes, okay. So she came in, I saw her 2 more times, and she got out the second time, looked at me right in the face and go, you still don't know anything about grief counseling. Okay. So, you have all these different stories, and you try to do the best you can. So that's it for those segments right now. Okay. So let's do a little, he mentioned CBT. I'm going to pass these out. So Father asked me to speak about some interventions because this season of depression and anxiety kind of goes up during this gloomy time. So that's what we're going to do. So here we go, right? What do you think I'm going to say? What? Right. No. But good. That was a good guess. I'm going to ask you how much this weighs. How much do you think this weighs? What do you think? 2 ounces? Any more? Any other takers?
3.
3 ounces? 7. 10. Okay, very good, thank you. Well, it doesn't really matter how much it weighs. It matters how long I hold it. So if I hold this for a minute, what do you think? No big deal, right? How about if I hold it for an hour? Well, I think my arm is starting to ache a little bit. How about if I hold this glass all day? I think my arm would get somewhat paralyzed and numb. So it doesn't really matter how full it is, it's how long we hold on to it. So just like stress and worry, if we have a worry or stress or anxiety and it comes through and it doesn't last very long, boom, it goes out. That's okay. I mean, that's normal. If it stays around, let's say an hour, accumulation of an hour through the day, that might slow us down a little bit. But how about if it was all day? We had these thoughts, this anxiety, all day. That paralyzes us, that slows us down. So I think all of you have ways already what you do to help you with worries, anxiety, stress of life, because that's what happens many times during life. And so if I could ask, I bet you have a lot of different ways that you do, and they work. The only thing is what I found in private practice is the wonderful things that we do to help ourselves during that time, we don't do them. We're too stressed out to do them. Even though we know maybe listen to the music or walking, running, whatever, that helps us, right? But we don't do them. So we want to begin to do those. So one thing that slows us down is our thoughts. So this is a real brief 101 and a half CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It has to do with thoughts. Now all our thoughts, where we have thousands and thousands, they're automatic. We can't stop them. Well, I don't want to think about it. Well, I don't know about you. I don't want to think about it. I want to think about it. Well, I'm going to be thinking about it even more. So it's automatic. So let's say we have an automatic negative thought. It comes in, right? Now we say, where are we emotionally? So let's say it comes in on a scale from 0 to 100. 100 means extreme. Let's say I'm an 80. That's pretty darn high. The thought is generating that emotion, which is generating the behavior. So these 10 right here, just take a fast glance at those. I call them cognitive distortions. They have unhelpful style, thinking style. There's different terms, but we all have our favorites. I have mine, and you have yours. And some of the favorites a lot of people have is fortune telling, mind reading. You know, I know she thinks this about me. I know he thinks, I know this, you know, or predicting, oh, it's never going to work out. All or nothing thinking. Okay. So at your leisure, take a look and see which ones you do, especially they pop out, guess when? When we're under stress. They pop up even more. So if we have a negative thought and we want to check it out and say, if I'm making one of these errors, thinking errors, if I am, then that means what I'm telling myself is not legit or exaggerated. So let's replace it. Here's the secret sauce. Let's replace it with something that's rational and makes sense. By doing that, that 80, let's say on anxiety, that 80 should go down. Probably not to 0, but it should drop. If you believe that we call it rational response. Okay? So just to recap one more time. Automatic thought comes in. Check it out to see if it's actually, but I feel that way. Absolutely you feel that way. That's why you're an 80. But is that negative, is that correct? Meaning, is it true? And most of the times it's not. So we want to replace it with something else. It is. The emotion will go down to a point that we can function better. And all emotions, they're not bad emotions or good emotions, but if we are sad once in a while, okay, but if we're sad all the time, or most of the time, well then check out the cognitive distortions. And that's what I do, and the behavioral part is behavioral. Go back and do the things behaviorally that takes care of yourself. It could be prayer. Again, it could be exercise. It could be yoga. It could be talking to friends. It could be whatever. For you, begin to do that. Journaling is another thing that people like to do. Okay. All right, that wraps up that short and sweet. Again, pick your favorites. Everybody has their favorites, especially when they're stressed out. Okay.